Welcome to In the Zone. I'm your host, Chris Broussard, and as always, I thank you for joining me. Now, look, let's get right into it. The Golden State Warriors have been in the news for so many reasons lately. Obviously, Kevin Durant is injured. Obviously, they have lost their mojo. Steph Curry is struggling with his jump shot. I'm one of those who believes he's the best shooter of all time, but he's certainly not looking like it lately. And then they struggled last night to beat the Philadelphia 76ers at home. So the Warriors are a big, hot topic within the NBA, but not just for basketball reasons. They have also been probably at the forefront, or certainly among the teams at the forefront, when it comes to talking about social, political, and even racial issues. Whether you go back a month to Draymond Green criticizing James Dolan, the Knicks owner, saying he had a slave master mentality with the way he handled Charles Oakley, or whether you go back to just last week with Andre Iguodala making post-game comments where he used terms massa and the N-word multiple times. So Iguodala in particular, and also Draymond, have kind of sparked a discussion that I think is very important. You know, a lot of people think we are in a time where race relations are getting worse rather than improving. And I think that these two guys, Draymond and Andre, have kind of brought this discussion to the forefront in their own way. A discussion not just about race, but also about the N-word and its use among blacks, among whites, and so on and so forth in the public eye. And so I have a special guest today that I brought on to have a discussion about the N-word and about what Draymond and Andre said that I think will be informative and entertaining. It's somewhat lighthearted for people of all races, you know, because if we're all going to live together in harmony here in America, we do need to understand each other's perspective and where different people are coming from. And so to do that with me today, I've brought in a good friend of mine, Marc Lamont Hill, who is the Distinguished Professor of African American Studies at Morehouse College. He's the author of 4 books, and many of you may have seen him on CNN, where he often appears as a political analyst and contributor. So we're just gonna get right into our discussion today, and I really hope and I believe that you will enjoy it here on In the Zone. Thanks for coming on In the Zone.
I'm glad to be here, man. I'm excited.
Well, I know you're a big basketball fan. People might not associate you with hoop. But first of all, you played at Morehouse. You played in my celebrity game last year. And for those listening, he got some game. He started the game off with like a crazy layup, like an AI Iverson type layup.
Junkyard dog, man. Those are my career highlights, man. I just try to stay in the game, man. You was killing them, though, man. You was putting up points. You ain't got no conscience.
Nah.
Jumpers.
I feel like I'm old enough I can shoot whenever I want now. Well, you also a season ticket holder with the Philadelphia 76ers. That's your hometown.
Yeah.
What do you feel about the way they're doing things right now? I mean, are you excited because of Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, or are you frustrated because of the injuries, or what?
I'm excited. You know, I was excited during the Hinkie stage of the process.
Really?
You know, people
so
say
you're
all
a
Hinkie
supporter?
did.
Okay.
I support. You know, people say all he did was lose, and anybody could lose. But he didn't just lose. He dumped the right he accumulated the right assets, dumped the right people, brought on some real value. I mean, the fact that we're going to swap picks with Sacramento this year if they lose, the fact that we'll have their 2019 draft pick, the fact that we have the Lakers potential pick this year if it's not in the top 3. I mean, these are all Hinkie things. And we got some gold. I mean, who knew Robert Covington could play? Who knew that, you know, there might be some value to some of the guys that we picked up who weren't even drafted? So I see it. Colangelo's a new stage, though. You know, he knows basketball, and he knows the kind of pieces we need to put together. And even though some of the moves have been unpopular, like getting rid of Ilyasova when he was probably the best offensive option we had, it made sense, though, because you've seen Dario Saric turn into the kind of player that we wanted him to be. I mean, he's probably Rookie of the Year, if not a strong second. So I feel good about where we are. The only beef I have is that Brett Brown, who I love, is talking about running Ben Simmons at the point next year. I don't understand it. And he's talking about defensively, not just point forward, actually running him at the point. Doesn't make sense to me basketball-wise, but look, other than maybe Minnesota, I feel good that this might be the best young team in the league. We go in 4 to 5 years, we will be NBA champions. That's what I'm saying right now.
NBA champions.
NBA champions. NBA champions.
Well, okay, so I was going to ask you, are you concerned about Embiid's health? But obviously not, because he's going to have to be a key component.
He's gonna have to be. Look, I every night I dream that his foot is okay. Usually when players start to fall, I move out the way. But if Joel Embiid coming my way, I'm trying to hold him up. I don't want him to fall for nothing. I don't want him to slip on a banana peel. Whatever he need, I'll make sure he's okay. I think the meniscus injury is a coincidence. If he had structural problem with his foot that recurred this year, I'd be more scared.
Okay.
But even without Joel Embiid, as crazy as this sounds, Ben Simmons might be a generational talent. We got at least 2, maybe 3 more lottery picks coming in the next 2 years, and we have some solid talent, and we got a ton of money. I think we're going to be okay either way. Nobody saw Golden State coming. Nobody's going to see Philly coming. I'm telling you, within 4 to 5 years, NBA champions.
All right, man. You sound like Jim Buss predicting that 3 years the Lakers. You know what happened to him, so
Jim Buss,
I'm not going to speak that on you, but okay. So the NBA in general, I mean, it's a lot. Look, I love Kevin Durant, and I'm hopeful he gets back healthy 100% and all that. And I'm glad with the prognosis that he should be back. But it's actually made it more interesting and exciting because now there's a little doubt. Who you have coming out of the West, and who do you kind of like winning it all?
I have Golden State coming out of the West with an asterisk.
Okay.
Without KD, that team is not the team of last year. I mean, they got rid of some depth. Not having Harrison Barnes, not having Bogut is an extra big. Some things matter. Those things matter. But I have them coming out. And then you got the LaMarcus Aldridge issue in San Antonio. If you'd asked me 4 months ago, I'd have said the Clippers were for real. But every year the Clippers look for real until they don't, right? Yeah. And Houston can't guard this chair. So when you get into the playoffs, half court offense, I don't see it. So I think until they show me something different, I have no reason to think that Golden State get to the finals the Western finals where they would need KD. He should be back and in a rhythm again. Yeah. On the East Coast, it's Cleveland's game to lose, barring injury. And injuries happen. I don't think Toronto's ready. I don't think Toronto's good enough. I don't think Boston is ready to move to the next level. I still think they're players short. And LeBron is still the best player on the court all the time. And when you get into, the fourth quarter of a close playoff game, that matters. Yep. So I'm going to be very, very vanilla and say it's going to be Cleveland, a Golden State again. And it's all going to come down to who has home court and how healthy the players are. If I had to put money right now, I would put it on Golden State. I just think they have too many weapons. But, again, it's going to come down to health and depth.
Yeah, that's how I picked it in the preseason, Golden State beating Cleveland in the finals. And, I would like to see a rubber match final, them in it for third straight year. So I think everybody wants to see that. But it'd be interesting if there's drama and intrigue leading up to it. Like San Antonio pushes the Warriors. That'd be exciting.
Which is what we saw last year, right? Yep. OKC pushed them to 7 and should have won, quite frankly.
No question.
We saw that, and that's why I say it wasn't just a fluke that Cleveland won. I mean, OKC showed Golden State shortcomings, man. When you're physical and when you can get out there and run, man, there's some things you can do against them. And I don't know, man. The only thing I say is I didn't respect KD's move.
Has that changed now? The way obviously they need him.
They need him because they got rid of a lot of assets to get him. I mean, yeah, of course you need him now because you made. So
do you think they made a mistake? Like just should have kept the bench and the depth and all that?
It's hard to look at Kevin Durant and not take him. I ain't mad in Golden State. I'm more mad or disappointed that Kevin Durant didn't want to beat Golden State bad enough to stay in OKC. They were beatable. They were beatable last year. You know what I mean? And even if they're going to Boston, where he said, you know what, I want my own legacy, my own team, and I want to beat LeBron and stop his finals run. I'm good with that. I'm not saying you got to go to the Wolves or Philly or Brooklyn or or Sacramento. I'm just saying don't go to the guy that just beat you and come back. It's hard for me to respect that. And I'm not out nostalgic. And I know the old school players probably would have done it if they had contract flexibility to do it. So I'm not trying to act like Michael Jordan or Isaiah Thomas or Charles Barkley would have done it. He could talk all trash. Charles Barkley would have been right on Chicago or New York if he could. But I'm still tight, man. I'm still tight right now, man. I need a little time.
Well, last NBA question, of course, who's your MVP right now?
Ooh, it's tough, man. If he averages a triple-double, it's hard not to go with Russell because I know people say, they're not a high enough seed. You need to be a top 3 seed, top 4 seed to be an MVP. I get that. But that's not a great team. That team wins and is even in the mix because of Russell's effort. He plays hard every night. I think triple-doubles are overrated, particularly when you snatching rebounds out of your center's hands. You know what I mean? Which is what happens a lot of times. But I still think that, the level of effort, the level of discipline he's playing with, I would like to see a little more defense out of Russell Westbrook. But he's putting numbers up. I mean, LeBron could win it every year. You know what I mean? You can make a case for LeBron
He's
every
the
year.
best
You can
player,
make
no question.
the best player on maybe the best team. But Anthony Davis, could have been the guy. You know what I mean? If the team had done better. But if we talk about records, I mean, Anthony Davis ain't even in the mix. Now he got a whole lot of help.
Yeah.
So I got to go with Russell, man. If a brother averages a triple-double for a whole season and makes the playoffs after losing KD on a team that people said couldn't make the playoffs without KD, I'm giving him the MVP for history's sake. And also, I want to make Mark Cuban mad. I want him to have to see the point that Russell Westbrook is a daggone superstar.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the triple-double is like the equivalent of hitting 400 in baseball. And so I agree with you. If Russell gets the triple-double and they're winning at a fairly high rate, like you said, I think they're maxing out. They're playing as well as they can play. I have to give it to him. Now, I'm telling you, if he averages 9.9 assists, I'm not giving it to him. Yeah, it's all about that because you're right. It's historic. It's incredible. We never thought we'd see it again. If anything, we thought LeBron might do it. But so I'm with you on Westbrook. Now, back to the Warriors, they've been in the news recently for a lot of things, not just KD being hurt or Steph not, shooting well. They've been in for a lot of things. Let's go back about a month when Draymond Green, if you remember the situation with James Dolan, the Knicks owner, and the way he treated Charles Oakley, having him kicked out of Madison Square Garden and saying he was an alcoholic and stuff like that. Draymond Green came out and said he thought Dolan displayed a slave owner mentality. What was your thought on that?
I agree with Draymond. I was appreciative of Draymond speaking out against that. There's a tendency in pro sports for owners to feel like they don't own teams, but they own players. When I looked at the letter that Dan Gilbert wrote after LeBron James had the audacity to exercise his free agency, it sounded half scorned lover, half angry slave master. When I saw how James Dolan, I'm going to win a championship before you do, that kind of, but then there was also, with Dolan, a similar sensibility. These guys work hard, they risk their bodies, they put their lives on the line every night physically. They're not, they're going to war, but they are physically going to war every night. And they have a very short window of opportunity to make money and to be successful, to feed their families and to make good choices. And sometimes we forget that this is a business and that players have to make choices for themselves. And owners sometimes become very frustrated when players exercise any kind of agency. And in the case of Charles Oakley, it seems like owners view players as disposable, that at the moment that they're no longer valuable to you, this doesn't happen. There's no way if Charles Oakley does the exact same thing, has the exact same critiques of ownership, has the exact same level of what Dolan would call arrogance or disregard for the Knicks' legacy. That don't happen in '94. If he says those same things in '94, he don't say nothing. He says, "Oh, that's Charles being Charles." But the moment you don't need him anymore, and I came up through Philly, right? I mean, I could tell you AI stories all day. You know what I mean? But the moment AI's first step wasn't as fast as it was anymore, the moment AI couldn't give you 30 points a game and lead a terrible team to the finals, suddenly he's a cancer. Oh, wait a minute. He's missing practice. Oh, there's some character issues. We got to get rid of him. The moment you can't do for them exactly what they want, which is to maximize and exploit your labor, then suddenly you're disposable to them. And that's the slave master mentality. Slaves were property. They weren't people to them. They were property. And that's why slaves didn't get killed, right? Because they didn't kill slaves because they were property. You don't throw away your lawnmower when it don't work, you fix it. So when slaves no longer were valuable to them as property and as tools to make money, then and only then do you get rid of them. That's the sensibility that many owners seem to display around the players. Now, I'm not saying that they're all racist. I'm not saying they're all white supremacists, but there's a certain idea that athletes are not people, but they're objects. And that's what Dolan demonstrated. I mean, and there's so many ways to get Charles Oakley out of a building. Don't get me wrong. Charles Oakley is, you got to bring a lunch if you're trying to make Charles Oakley want to do. I'm not trying to act romantic about Charles Oakley, but you don't got to lock him up. You don't have to charge him. To criminalize these guys, to criminalize a player like that is shameful and it's unnecessary. And it backfired. I mean, the whole league looked at Dolan like he was crazy. And Dolan, obviously, that says a lot more about Dolan than it does about Charles Oakley.
Man, I agree with you 100%. I've said some of those same things. I remember saying when Dan Gilbert wrote that letter about LeBron, he talked about him like he was a runaway slave. Yeah. And LeBron did nothing. LeBron just acted like a free man. He literally was a free agent, but I can do what I want to do. And you're right, the backlash was crazy. And that's one reason LeBron acts as he does. When he says, I want to go here, I want to bring this player with me, that player. Like, he sees himself not as just a player. He sees himself being able to operate on the same level as the owners and the GMs and all that, which I like that in him. With the Warriors, sticking with them, of course, last week, Andre Iguodala, I've said that if owners are going to sometimes exercise the mentality of a slave master, then it shouldn't sometimes be surprising when players make references that, kind of put them in that position under a slave master or something. Even though I hate seeing blacks refer to, whites as massa and stuff. Iguodala was doing it, kind of trying to troll the media. But what'd you think of his comments last week, from massa to the N-word and all that?
I was a little surprised by the comments. Again, growing up in Philly, I know Andre Iguodala pretty well. It didn't seem like his normal MO in front of the media. I've talked to him offline. He's a smart guy, very aware, very well-read, real deep dude. You know what I mean? There's a lot of guys in the league like that who people don't know. Mm-hmm. And speaking of the word, David West is like that too.
Yes.
I mean, just who's smart, very aware, cares about things going on. So I get it. I was a little surprised to hear it in the media, because usually that's like a behind-the-scenes joke. That's a locker room joke. That's not necessarily a media conversation. But when he said it, I immediately understood what he was doing. He was signifying, right? And black folk have a way of speaking through indirection. So when he says, you want a dumb N-word, that's what I'm going to give y'all today, or is whatever masters say, we know he's being ironic. We know he's being sarcastic. And we know that he's not necessarily even having a beef with Steve Kerr or the ownership. We understand it in a more complicated way. But when the media hears, they're like, oh, my God, he used the N-word. Oh, my God, he used them. And so I think Iguodala was, like you said, trolling the media is a good way to say it. He was trying to get the media to respond, and he sparked a conversation that's important. Now, I like to selectively use those moments of media trolling, because I'm good for a media troll on occasion. But I try to use it around an issue. I would have rather he used it when Donald Sterling was wilding out, or when the Atlanta Hawks had their controversy with Danny Ferry a while back, or
and the ownership there too, with some comments about black fans and all that.
Absolutely. Yep. In fact, Danny Ferry kind of got under the bus. It was really much. It was a deeper issue than just him. Right. I would have liked to see that more so than just a random kind of question about playing time, just because you only get a few moments to do that, right? Mm-hmm. You only get a few passes. And because he's Andre Iguodala and he's a model citizen and people love him, he can get a couple of those through it. If Draymond Green has that same statement at the same moment, you know what I mean? He gets maybe a $50,000 fine, maybe he gets suspended on it.
Because 10,000 is like, that's just like, man, I had to do something.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. That's a free pass, basically. So, and the other thing I would say is, while I agree that the relationship is exploitative and that owners act like slave masters at times, I'm also one of those people who's reluctant to compare everything to slavery.
I agree.
Because our ancestors, slavery was the most inhumane, vicious institution. I'm not comparing oppressions to other groups, because everybody's had oppression. But as an institution in America, there's been nothing more violent, nothing more ugly, nothing more long-standing and durable than slavery. So it's hard to compare that to somebody who's going to make $800 million, $200 million over the course of their career. So I don't compare it in that sense, but the exploitative nature is something that Andre highlighted. I'm kind of glad he did, because we're having a conversation about it.
Yeah, it's sparked great conversation, and I agree with you. Like, I didn't like him using slavery to quote unquote troll the media, because, as you said, that there's too much bloodshed, too many lives lost. And still today, we're dealing with ramifications and repercussions from that institution. So, but he obviously used the N-word. Now, I'm one of those African Americans who who feels like we shouldn't use it as a people, as African Americans. Obviously, I understand it's different when blacks use it than whites use it. I got family members. Come on, we got frat brothers. I got friends, great friends. People I greatly respect, Michael Eric Dyson, yourself, I believe, is on the side that we can use it and should be able to use it. What is your stance on the N-word? And, tell me about why you feel like we should use it.
And that's interesting. I won't go so far as saying we should use it. Like, I'm not, I'm not like an advocate for. I'm not like proselytizing for the N-word.
Because I think Dr. Dyson, who we both know and love, he adamantly defends it and like
pro.
promotes it. Yeah.
Right. Whereas I use it. Now let me be very clear. I use it. In fact, I talked to him this morning. Probably used it 17 times. And I'm okay with Black people using it within particular spaces because I think that words have meaning and those meanings aren't easy to shake. I don't pretend that the N-word doesn't have any connection to slavery anymore. It does, right? Words don't just change magically. But I do think that Black folk have a long tradition through the context of slavery of transforming meanings, of reshaping cultural practices in such a way that it might mean something different for us than it does for them. Stuff that was meant for bad. I mean, soul food, right? I mean, the whole premise of soul food is stuff that was given to slaves that we wouldn't want. Now, I don't want a Thanksgiving without my mama's collard greens. You know what I mean? I want that.
You
stuff,
still
right?
eating chitlins, man? You still eating chitlins?
You
ain't going that far.
I don't go that far. You know what I mean? But I respect people who do. I ain't gonna be in the kitchen when you make it. I don't want to smell it, but I respect your choice. You know what I'm saying? But for me, I think it's really important to make that distinction. I think the argument against the N-word is that it promotes hate or self-hate. I have seen the most loving context where it's been used, and I refuse to believe that it meant hate. For example, Andy Young will tell you this, and in some of the biographies of Dr. Martin Luther King, there was a day where Andrew Young was missing. He was out. He ran an errand. He was mentored by Martin Luther King Jr. And long before he was an ambassador or mayor of Atlanta. And Dr. King got worried because it was the middle of the most violent period in American history, one of the most violent periods. So after about an hour, Andy Young comes back into headquarters and he says, "Little, where have you been?" Right now, you ain't gonna convince me Dr. King don't love Black people. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Or that he ain't love Andy Young. Now, could he have said it in a different way? Sure. Could he be smuggling in some old self-hate? Perhaps. But I think a more likely thing is that Black folk have just managed to use the stuff that's been hurled against us in different ways. I think the other argument against the N-word is that if we use it, then white people can use it, right? White people are much smarter than we give them credit for. I don't want to infantilize white people, right? White people have managed to run sports, to run major empires, to have their faces be the prototype for what's beautiful, what's smart, what's moral, what's ethical. They have changed the face of God. They have changed the face of everything, right? They can, if you can do all that, you can understand a very simple rule. I can say it, and you, right? Like, it ain't that complicated, right?
I hear you. I got a few things you said. Okay, look, obviously, with African Americans, a lot of us use it as a term of endearment. And I'm sure, like when you and Dr. Dyson used it today, it was as a term of endearment.
Absolutely.
But I would call it more so a term of familiarity. Because a lot of times, again, it's a term of endearment. A lot of times, if we be honest, I think it's also a term of hatred. Like, I'm going to kill that,
Yes,
these
absolutely.
ain't, you know what I mean? Like, especially not
Absolutely.
just hip hop music, but in general, in our communities. I think we kind of use it as a term in different ways. I mean, some ways it's pretty innocuous. You might describe, I've seen brothers call a white dude the N-word, or a person of another race. So a lot of times it's innocuous. A lot of times it's loving in a term of endearment. And a lot of times it's a term of hatred, Black on Black or whatever it may be, obviously white on Black. So that would be my argument against the term of endearment, thing. As far as whites being able to say it, obviously, again, it's definitely different. I'm around Blacks who say it all the time, and I got love and respect for them. I don't want to hear a white person say it. But we had, like, Jada Kiss, he was on Undisputed yesterday, and he was saying, look, he's a MC that uses, the N-word in a lot of his rhymes. And he was saying, it's hard to tell a white kid, like, when they rapping along, they love Black hip-hop stars. And they know the lyrics, and they memorize it, and they rapping. I think it's a little tough. Not that it's hard, but it's almost to expect them, if they're rapping the lyrics, to stop at every time they hear the N-word. And some songs, they be stopping like every few seconds.
Right, that's true.
But it's just, I think that we're not segregated anymore. I think when we were in segregation and it was pretty much us by ourselves using it among ourselves, maybe it was different. But now I think, the whole world, people of other races have access to our art, to many aspects of our culture. That's one of the things I think our dominance as athletes and entertainers and musicians and stuff, that has put a lot of African-American issues and particularities and concerns in our culture. Our culture is now out there in mainstream America. And that's why I think since we're not segregated anymore, it's hard to totally expect other people never to use it, particularly if you're talking about hip hop and whites that grew up around blacks that use the N-word and all that stuff.
I agree that it's tougher. I'll say this though. I've been around dudes, right? And they'll be spitting Biggie Smalls lyrics, right? They'll be spitting Jadakiss lyrics. Lil' Kim lyrics come on. They spitting Lil' Kim's lyric too because they go hard. Yeah. But when she get to the part about performing a sex act on a man, nobody accidentally says that. Nobody accidentally says, yo, I went down on the, you know what I mean? Every dude stops, right? They do all the words, the Benjamins, they do every Lil' Kim lyric, Junior Mafia, but the moment she say I go down, everybody turns mute, right? Yeah. So we have a way of silencing ourselves and being very selective, right? And no one says, well, you know, why aren't they saying all these? Because we don't want to, right?
Yeah,
For
right.
a variety.
That's right.
So if the same man that can stop when he's spitting the Nicki Minaj lyric that he don't want to represent, or stop spitting the Lil' Kim lyric or the Remy Ma lyric that he don't want to represent, when the white guy hears the black lyric, the N word, he can just stop. When I spit rhymes and somebody says the B word, I don't say it. I just don't. I pause. I do the same thing because I'm against homophobia. When people use the F word against gay people, I don't say it during the middle of a lyric because it's not what I want to represent. If someone did that against Jews, I would spit it. You know what I mean? On the Benjamins, there's a line, the Jadakiss, you do like we do, stack chips like Hebrews, right? On all the versions that have come out in the last 20 years, they mute the word Hebrew because they don't want to be anti-Semitic. So we're committed to muting the words that offend certain groups, and we should be.
Yeah.
But we can do that to black folk. Now, you might say that's an argument for not using the N-word at all.
I was going to say, yeah, because I feel like other groups, they don't let certain images of themselves be put out there for public consumption. Certainly not on a mass scale. But we are doing that, and not just by using the N-word, but even, you know, obviously some of the negative content. Then to me, that makes it even uglier, you know, that some of these images, and particularly the N-word, are being used by us for public consumption.
It is interesting that even when black people control media, you know, for example, BET, we still have negative images coming out. I'm all about saying let's have fewer negative images. I believe in art. I believe in projection of all kinds of people. So I want the character from Fences, to exist. You know what I mean? I want the character from Moonlight to exist. I want Alonzo from Training Day to exist. I want all that to. I want Malcolm to exist, right? I want all that to exist. But I don't want to normalize pathology. I think the question for me, though, is does the N-word normalize pathology? You raise an interesting point. If I say, yo, I'm going to go kill that N-word, if I replace N-word with brother, don't make sense. Yo, I'm going to go shoot that brother in the head, right? You can't do that. Yeah. So in that context, the N-word probably doesn't mean anything loving or endearing. But if we can not, I just don't want to become religious about the N-word so that we focus so much on calling people the N-word as opposed to these systems and structures that treat people like the N-word. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's I think that's a great point because when the N-word, from my studies, the N-word initially was just a normal, it came from the Spanish word Negro and the Latin word Niger, which is actually in the Bible. Acts chapter 13, there's a man, Simeon, called Niger, which literally means the black man. And he was one of those that sent the Apostle Paul out to Europe and Asia Minor with the gospel. But it comes from that word. And initially, even in America, it was like a neutral term. But what made it become so negative was the behavior that it was associated with. And a lot of times, I mean, when a black person in slavery was being brutalized, whipped, castrated, whatever it might be, that's the word that's associated with it. And that's where the hatred for it came from us, and also where, you know, it became such a negative term among all groups. So part of me too feels like because, you know, a lot of our ancestors, obviously back in the day, and even some of our elders today, they really hate that word. They really despise it. So part of me feels like just out of respect for them who they went through so much to get us the freedoms we enjoy today, they had to hear that word spoken to their face by a white person. And so their hatred for the word, obviously, we understand. So a lot of me feels like out of respect for them, we should stop saying it, you know, so casually amongst ourselves and certainly in mixed company, you know?
I do find it interesting as generations move on, because you talk about this. Like my daughter's 13 and she has a very different take on it, and she goes to a very mixed school and the kids all listen to hip hop and they love all that stuff. But they police that word not just for the white kids in her school, but also for them. None of them use
So
it.
she doesn't think it should be used.
No, and she's appalled by my use of
it. Yeah, it's a different generation for sure. Another thing, like I hear, and again, Dr. Dyson, I've heard him say, we use it with the A at the end, and whites with the ER. That's when it's negative. And my feeling is, obviously, most of us African Americans came from the South. We still, no matter where we grew up, a lot of times speak with a Southern accent. And it also, and I say this respectfully, it may be some form of Ebonics too. But we do that. I think we substitute ER or A for ER in many words, like sucker. We don't say sucker, we say sucker. Or brother, we don't say brother, we say brother. So I think that argument is, also a bit misguided. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, unless there was this meeting of great black minds where we said we're going to make it with an A rather than ER. I just think that, to me, that's kind of an excuse just to say it,
It's the I think what he means is the linguistic difference is like a marker for other differences, right? Because it's not like if a white person starts using the A or a black person starts using the ER that suddenly it's okay or not okay. I think the issue is that we know intent and meaning partly by the person who's using it and the kind of culture they're engaged in. I think the fact that white people use with the ER historically it means that it carries with it a certain kind of racial and white supremacist weight that the A term of it hasn't. So even when a white person uses it with the A, a lot of times that's the white person that's been with hip hop. That's the person that's listening to DMX or Jay-Z growing up in the 90s or whatever, and they're using it differently. It doesn't excuse it, you know what I mean? But I think it's more of a marker of the difference than the difference itself.
Yeah. No, I get where you're coming from. I feel like we're so attached to that word. We call ourselves African American today. I do that as well. A part of me really prefers black because, a lot of my mentality is Pan-African, and that includes black people or people of African descent all over the world who all have been a victim in some way, shape, or form of, European oppression, colonization in Africa and so on and so forth. But we created that term for ourselves more, black. We decided we're going to call ourselves black. So I would rather us be more attached to that word that we created ourselves than the N word that somebody else kind of put on us, and especially put on us in a negative way. But why do you feel like there's such, I think some of us even feel power when we say that word?
Well, because it's the one thing we can do that white people can't. I mean, how many things in the world can black people do that white people just can't? And it's kind of commonly socially understood, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of empowered. I say it and I know you can't. You know what I mean? It's like in a world where whiteness still dominates, and of course there are vulnerable white people, there are poor white people, there are dispossessed white people. All white people ain't in control of the world. I'm not suggesting that. But whiteness still dominates the world as a normative ideal. And this is the one place where black folk, no matter how poor you are, no matter how rich you are, no matter how destitute you are, no matter how marginalized you are, don't matter. You can do something that white people can't. And there's something exciting about that to me. And I think a lot of everyday black people feel like that. It's ours and can't nobody else have it.
That's one of the better explanations that I've heard. I still wish we would stop saying it. And it's complex because I do feel like in a historical or educational sense, it can be used. But that was an interesting point. But man, look, this has been a tremendous discussion. You got some basketball knowledge too, but obviously you're known for your knowledge of African American history and culture and politics. And so I really appreciate what you have shared with us today. Let me ask you this as well. We see, I think, African American athletes in general being a little more outspoken about political issues. Where do you think, first of all, how do you feel about that? And is there a next step for athletes in this area, or is it those like yourself or black lawmakers, black urban planners, black economists need to kind of take it from the black athletes who have raised awareness and take it to a level where maybe there can be some legislation or some real change about these things?
At the end of the day, it's going to come down to a small group of people who are committed and making the sacrifice. When you look at the civil rights struggles of the 60s, 87, somewhere between 86 and 87% of Black folk did not participate in civil rights resistance actions, right? So, it was 12.5% of people I'm talking about just going to one march, one sign, one song, one sit-in. Most folk weren't doing that. And some people didn't want to. Some people were just trying to live their lives. Most people don't do this work. So there's always going to be a small group of people that resist. It's kind of like football, right? We're on the line grinding and fighting, and we open up a little hole so someone else can run through and score the touchdown. And that's what civil rights struggle is like. That's what the next generation of struggle is going to be. It's a small group of us grinding and grinding and not getting any credit for it. You only see the guy in the end zone spiking the ball. You don't really know who's on the line.
That's right.
So that's the same kind of moment. Now, some of the people on the line are going to be everyday people. Some are going to be preachers. Some are going to be teachers. Some are going to be professors because they can be on the ground every single day doing that work. There are going to be some celebrities. There have always been celebrities doing this work. But the celebrity work isn't necessarily to lead our movement. It's simply to be part of the movement. What Harry Belafonte did was so extraordinary. He created a space as he learned from Paul Robeson, he created a space for Ossie Davis and a Ruby Dee, but also for Martin Luther King. He helped fund the March on Washington. So he didn't have to lead it. He didn't have to plan it. We had Barrett Rustin to do that. He didn't have to be on the ground, rallying people. We had Fannie Lou Hamer doing that, right? But what we had was somebody who was willing to create that. Sidney Poitier helped fund these moments, right? We got Jay-Z right now helping fund Black Lives Matter, according to news reports, right? According to what I've heard. So we have athletes who can stand up and speak out. Holding your fist up as you win Olympic gold medals, extraordinary. That matters. Saying I'm not going to fight no Viet Cong, Muhammad Ali, that matters. It absolutely matters. And similarly now, when the NBA players say, hey, we're not going to take the court, or we're going to have a certain jersey on or a certain T-shirt on, we're going to say Black Lives Matter, we're going to do something to resist. Those symbolic acts of resistance matter. And at this moment, they matter more than ever because we have a different system of leadership. We have a horizontal leadership style rather than a vertical one. So it's a leaderful movement. So we don't have one King or one Malcolm or one Marcus Garvey or whomever. We have a bunch of leaders. And so it's harder to find that person to look to. So if we can look to the internet, if we can look to the ground, if we can look to the church, if we can look to the streets, but we can also look to some NBA players who are willing to resist, I'm down with that. I love that. I'm excited by that. I'm excited by our brother Colin Kaepernick, what he did. But those symbolic gestures can't be enough. So we can't be like, hey, why are more NBA players doing this? Because that's not going to fix the problem. It never did. We need NBA players to stand up, to speak out, to resist, to use their money in places. And look, everybody ain't going to have the same job. Everybody ain't going to hold a microphone. Some of these folk, you don't want to hold a microphone. Yeah, some of these folk don't want to be on TV, right? Like, why don't more rappers speak out? Now, trust me, bro, you don't want these rappers. But give us some money so we can have a movement. Give us an after-school program. Give us a breakfast program. So for me, what I said, and it's funny, I was talking to some of the Warriors players when they came to Philly a couple of weeks ago on the 27th. And I said to them, I said, look, now is the time to speak out. We are relitigating the battles of the 50s. Stuff we thought was done, we're fighting all over again, in addition to new battles. We need y'all more than ever. I'm not asking y'all to compromise your whole career. I'm not asking y'all, you got 12 years to make a lot of money and to live out your dream. I'm not asking you to give all that away, although some people have. What I am asking you to do is to speak out and be courageous when you can.
Kaepernick may have done that, man. He's not getting any love on the free agent market, it doesn't look like. So, unfortunately, he may have done that.
He may have done that, and it breaks my heart because he still can play. Yeah. He still has a spot in the league. Again, I'm in Philly. We've been through way worse quarterbacks in the last 10 years than Colin Kaepernick. I mean, 5 years ago, 5 years ago, he's in the Super Bowl. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, there's a spot in the league for him, but unfortunately, as we saw with Craig Hodges, as we saw with Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, it's seen, a lot of time it's the informal blackballing. It's like, oh, we're not going to formally blackball you. No one's going to pick you up.
That's right.
No one's going to sign you because we'd rather have we can sign Matt Barkley to hold a clipboard. You know what I mean? It's Eagles, or we can bring Kevin Cobb back or Nick Foles back rather. And even though he doesn't have nearly the talent of a Colin Kaepernick, doesn't matter. He ain't going to raise no problem. And some owners like Jerry Jones have been very open about it, right? Like, hey, nobody on my team can do that.
That's right.
These leagues are so wedded, and I know you got to run, but these leagues are so wedded to a very narrow idea of what patriotism looks like. from the flags to the soldiers at the at halftime, especially the NFL. I mean, they're uber,
Oh yeah,
almost jingoistic. And I'm not dissing them for that per se, but they have to understand that patriotism looks different on a black body. When somebody dies in the nation, a soldier or God forbid, a politician, we hold the flag at half mast. We still have the flag, but it's at half mast to acknowledge that something has happened. It doesn't mean we don't respect the flag. We lower the flag because we want to acknowledge that tragedy has happened in our democracy. Mm-hmm. Similarly, when Colin Kaepernick shows up for the national anthem but takes a knee, his body is at half mast. He is saying that I, as a person, recognize a crisis in America, and while I'm not going to disrespect this process, what I am going to do through my body is show that we have some mourning to do and we have some work to do. I think we should be honoring that, but we have such a narrow patriotism that's all about America, God bless America, and no place else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That we lose sight of the fact that the greatest patriotism is to resist. It's to fight. But when black folk resist and say anything is wrong with America, right? We can complain about
right.
Right.
Yep.
They get out of here. Go back to where you came from. Like, we didn't build this thing.
That's right.
And same thing for the athletes. If you don't like it, leave the NFL. Well, what happens if all the NFL players leave? What you know what I mean? What you gonna do with NFL without black players or NBA without black players? And that's not a racial argument. I'm not making a Jimmy the Greek argument. I'm just saying I'm making a demographic argument. I'm saying they all black. Yeah. So maybe we should care about some of these issues. The NBA does that a lot better than other leagues. They get who their audience is and they get who their personnel is, and they realize that their issues are our issues, not just because black players in the NBA, but because black people matter for Americans because they are Americans, man. And that's what I want these athletes to do. I want them to be courageous, to resist, and to use their collective power to change the world.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. And I thought Kaepernick displayed a lot of courage because he wasn't that superstar anymore. And he was expendable. If he had said that as a superstar, then they got to keep you. But he said it when knowing, look, I'm on the bench. Maybe they get rid of me. And also, like you said, he's displaying patriotism because he's trying to say, let's have America live up to its values for all people, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, Native American, whatever. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. Well, look, man, great discussion, outstanding. I don't know if I convinced you not to use the N-word, but I think your daughter might eventually.
I think she's gonna get it. I just need you to remember, though, 5 years from now, the Sixers NBA champion.
I'm going to put you on blast. I'm going to do more than remember it. But look, if they stay healthy, though, I do agree with you. If they stay healthy, then sky's the limit. Because I not only love Embiid, I love Ben Simmons, too. So.
Yes, we got to trust me, we good.
Y'all deserve it, too, for all these years of struggle. Y'all deserve it.
We ain't won a championship since 1983. Basketball championship. Now I'm desperate. You all stocked up with championships. You don't need no championships for a while.
All right, brother, man. Thanks a lot. Love you, man. Appreciate it.
Man. Peace.
Yep. Well, there you have it. Obviously, Marc Lamont Hill and I come at it from two different perspectives. He feels like it's okay for African Americans to use the N-word amongst themselves. I would prefer that we drop it all together, that we don't use that word to describe ourselves privately or publicly. I feel like, we should have great respect for our ancestors and elders who really endured some torturous mistreatment at the hands of those who use that word. And they despise that word and they associate it with some terrible atrocities. So just out of respect for them and honor for them and their wishes, I would love to see us drop it. And obviously there are a few more reasons for that as well. But whatever the case, hopefully you enjoyed the discussion. Hopefully you were informed by it. You learned something and maybe even were a little bit entertained by it. But it's up to you to make your own decision on how you feel about this topic. But hopefully this gave you a lot of food for thought. Before you go, I would like to leave you with this one clip. It's from Richard Pryor, the legendary comedian who himself did a 180 on the use of the N-word as a black man after he visited Kenya, which of course is a country in Africa, in 1979. I want you to check this out before you go and then join us next week here on In the Zone.
One thing I got out of it was magic I'd like to share with you. It's like I was leaving and I was sitting in the hotel and a voice said to me, look around, what do you see? And I said, I see all colors of people doing everything, And the voice said, do you see any? And I said, no. And I said, you know why? Because there aren't any. And it hit me like a shot, man. I started crying. I was sitting there, I said, yeah, I've been here 3 weeks. I haven't even said it. I haven't even thought it. And it made me say, oh my God, I've been wrong. I've been wrong. I got to regroup. I said, I ain't gonna never call another black man. You know, because we never was no. That's a word that's used to describe our own wretchedness. And we perpetuate it now because it's dead. So you can take it for what it's worth. I know, like, I ain't trying to preach nothing to nobody. I'm just talking about my feelings about it. I'm just telling you, it's uncomfortable to me. I don't like it when black people say it to me. I really don't no more. It's nothing. It don't mean nothing. So I love y'all, and you take that with you.